You have entered the mysterious world of terror at Collinwood, and I am very excited to be joined by my guests today, Schuarah Sykes, Lorraine Treadwell, and Rick Boissonneau, and they're going to share so many wonderful memories of their Dark Shadows experiences, memories of attending the Dark Shadows festivals, Collins Association Halloween events, their experiences with the actors, and watching the show growing up as kids. Before we get to that, I have some news bites for you. First of all, from the Dark Shadows news page comes the information that Kate Jackson is doing a rare appearance. The illustrious Miss Jackson will be appearing at the Chiller Theater Convention on October 25th through the 27th. And that's a big deal because Kate Jackson doesn't do too many appearances, but she has been doing them a little bit more lately. So if you want to meet Kate Jackson, now's your chance at the Chiller Theater Convention. Big convention down in New Jersey. Huge convention. Speaking of events that are worth going to, 3 ladies of Dark Shadows will be celebrating the Jonathan Frid centenary on the East Coast at the Sleepy Hollow International Film Festival. Joins Sharon Smith-Lentz, Marie Wallace, and Donna Wandry in celebrating the Jonathan Frid centenary. That's going to be happening in Tarrytown, New York on October 12th at 1:30 p.m. as part of the Sleepy Hollow International Film Festival. Amanda Desiree has posted news about her upcoming book, The Dark Shadows Event Diary, Memories of Festivals, Film Screenings, and Fan Gatherings. It's going to be available in paperback, and you can pre-order it now on Amazon. I'll put a link in the show notes. So that's a book you're going to want to read. Amanda does an amazing job of really diving in deep and recapping all of the experiences that she's had attending these Dark Shadows events. And now you can attend an event, Dark Shadows or otherwise, in your snazzy new Terror at Collinwood t-shirt, available at the Penny Dreadful the 13th Tea Public Shop. There are several designs available, all illustrated by the incredible Eric Marshall. I am wearing one in this episode, and I have to say it is very comfy. The material is very soft. Very nice shirt. Looks like it's screen printed right onto the shirt. It's fantastic. So you can get your Terror at Collinwood t-shirts over at the Penny Dreadful the 13th Tea Public Shop. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And without further ado, let's get to the show.
Conjured up a podcast. I hope you're ready for Terror at Collinwood, hosted by the bewitching Penny Dreadful.
Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. 'Tis I, Penny Dreadful, the contemptuous carbon copy of Danielle. And welcome to the show. I am really excited to welcome my guests, some new friends I made over at Seaview Terrace when I was there back in the springtime. I am joined by Lorraine Treadwell, Rick Boissonneau, and Schuarah Sykes, who are all original East Coast Dark Shadows fans who grew up watching the show when it originally aired. Lorraine studied creative writing, journalism, and Black theater at the City College of New York. She attended her first Dark Shadows festival at the Gateway Hilton in the 1980s and has many great stories and memories of interacting with the DS cast, crew, and fellow fans at various gatherings over the last 30-plus years. Rick Boissonneau co-wrote the now rare book Dark Shadows, A View of Collinsport, which examines the exterior locations used in the show and movies. Rick was also involved with the Collins Association and participated in memorable Halloween skits with several of the series' stars. Schuarah Sykes lives in Mount Olive, New Jersey, with his wife, Michelle. He's semi-retired after over 30 years in pharmaceuticals and is a graduate of Rutgers University. He attended the Dark Shadows festivals from 1986 through 2019 on both the East and West coasts. Schuarah is also an avid fan of science fiction, horror, mystery, crime noir, action, and select romance films. As a child, he thought Barnabas's wolf's head cane was the coolest, and this was the beginning of his affection for walking sticks, of which he now has a nice collection. And yes, the Barnabas cane is his favorite. Welcome to the show. It's so nice to see the three of you.
Great. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
Well, I'm really thrilled to have you all here. We had such a nice time over at Seaview Terrace back in the spring, which I believe that was your first time attending one of those parties for the three of you, right?
Yes. Second for Rick.
Second for Rick.
Yeah,
okay.
First for me.
Yeah, and first for you, Lorraine.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were just talking about how surreal it is being in that mansion, talking about Dark Shadows with other fans. It's just such a fun time.
Yeah, it is. What we would do is during various different festivals many years ago, we would go up to the mansion, from New York on a bus trip. We would park outside the mansion, and then we would kind of peek through and look. Sometimes we go on the property. We weren't supposed to. Don't tell anybody. But we would take a look at it. So we would look at it from the outside, but we never got a chance to go inside. So this was a real treat.
That's when they called campus security. The college kids were living in the place at the time, and they got scared when they saw all those people running all over the lawn out there. And they called campus security. Campus security came up. They had to straighten things out, but it worked out.
Yeah. Some of those kids really mistreated that place when they lived there. They were literally swinging from the chandelier, which is such a shame. But luckily, gradually there's been restoration done largely.
Years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Carey gave me a tour of the mansion when I was doing the book with Shelley. And they were telling then about how the kids were really destroying the place, and they were showing me the destruction they had done to some of the statues, and it was just terrible.
Yeah, it's a shame, but they've been doing a lot of restoration in recent years, so that's been really, really great. Now, I want to talk to you before we get into your memories of going to the festivals and participating in different events. I want to talk a little bit about your childhood. So did you all run home from school to watch Dark Shadows? I know, Lorraine,
Absolutely.
I read your entry. You got off the bus and you walked home, right?
I took a yellow school bus.
Yeah. I was going to call this episode "Running Home from School to Watch Dark Shadows." I'm not sure yet.
I was a block away from my house. From school to my house, elementary school. So it was about a block away.
So no need to run.
No.
Yeah. Same thing for me too. I was about a block and a half away, but I was so excited that I ran home in order to catch it. So in my excitement. So.
Well, I would catch the last 17 minutes of it. And so when they changed the time, I was able to watch more of it, but it was awesome.
Yeah, and it's great that they did that, because there were so many kids that wanted to watch the show that's why they changed the time so that the kids would get home in time to watch it.
Especially kids getting involved in a soap opera.
Right.
Kids back in then, unless you were young girls, the boys really didn't care much for soap operas. I had always joked with my mother over the years. I'd say, I hate soap operas. And she said, you used to watch one. I said, okay, which one? She said, Dark Shadows. I says, okay, when somebody like General Hospital puts on witches, werewolves, and vampires, I will watch it.
There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go. I never even was introduced to Dark Shadows as a soap opera. My uncle, who watched it when he was a kid in the 60s, he introduced it to me. I watched it in syndication on Channel 58 out of Vineyard Haven in Cape Cod, and also some tapes recorded from syndication in the early to mid 80s. And to me, it was just a really cool serialized show that was really spooky and had all these, supernatural goings on. And my mom watched all my children. I'd watch that with her sometimes. And I never really made the connection, because it was the content in Dark Shadows is so distinct and different from what you would see in a soap opera with everyone kind of sitting around the table talking about who's cheating on who. It's, all kinds of weird goings on, that sort of gothic stuff. So there's no wonder it appealed to kids, and that whole monster craze that was going on at the time too, where kids were.
Yeah, absolutely. It got our attention. okay, because of what you just said. And once again, I wasn't much for the soap operas. I mean, my mother would watch it sometimes, or some aunties, whatever, but this had the vampires and the werewolves, and it was scary and spooky, and so it was exciting. So I was glued to the set.
I enjoyed it. I didn't really find it spooky, but the music had such a dramatic buildup. Robert Colbert, when he had the dun dun dun, I was like, oh wow. I was born on Halloween, so I really appreciated this.
Oh my God.
It was fantastic and fun.
I love that you were born on Halloween. It was a show that was made for you. It was like meant for you.
Well, what was funny about it was at the time, my parents couldn't afford a color TV. We had it in black and white. I didn't know they had made it in color till years later. I'd always seen it in black and white. And I think the black and white gives it a more eerie effect.
Some fans prefer, I mean, they'll turn off the TVs where you could turn off the color. They used to, some fans would just watch it in black and white, because it kind of has that universal horror kind of, or Val Lewton movie kind of a vibe when it's in black and white. So I want to go around just like how you first discovered Dark Shadows. I will start with Lorraine, and then Schuarah, and then Rick.
I was just home one day from school and flipping the channels, and I was getting bored with cartoons, and the next thing I know, I saw this thing with fangs, and I was like, this is great. And no, I don't remember anybody in my neighborhood. I was born and raised in Harlem. I don't remember anybody else talking about it or looking at it, but I thought it was just fantastic. Unfortunately, back then you only had one TV. So if somebody else got to it before I did, then I didn't get a chance to always see the show. But I enjoyed it.
And what about you, Schuarah?
I think I was flipping through the channels, and I came upon it, and it was spooky. And my mother described it to me as she was so scared, because there I was, this little boy, just so entranced in something, it had my total attention, that she was scared for me, but I was just loving it, because I always liked spooky things ever since I was a little kid. And so I kept on watching it, and I ran home, watched it, ran home, came back to school the next day, talked about it with my girlfriend. I'm a little kid, I had a little girlfriend, but anyway, and we talked about Dark Shadows, and it was really, 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 really good. There wasn't anything else like it, and it really caught my attention.
Do you remember the storyline that was playing at the time?
I think what it was the lottery that I can recall.
Oh wow! Oh, so you caught it like 1841 parallel time.
As you know, I was little. I was born in 61, so I was I was young. During the time. And that's what I can remember specifically, the lottery. But I do recall Jonathan being very menacing as Barnabas.
Okay, so you had a memory of that.
So, I have memory of that.
I like that you discovered it during that lottery storyline, because a lot of people haven't. That's not when they started it. It was like a lot of the people I've had on the show. A lot of times it's the Adams storyline, or Barnabas, introduction to Barnabas. So that's really interesting that you got sucked in during the lottery, the 1841 parallel time. Really cool. Great. And Rick, how about you?
Well, some kids in my neighborhood at the time, a lot of the girls, boys didn't pay much attention to soap operas, as I said before. And these girls were talking, and all of a sudden we heard about this vampire. And my ears perked up at the moment. I heard that. And they were saying Dark Shadows. So I went home to my mother and I says, have you ever heard this show called Dark Shadows? She says, yeah, I think it comes on right after General Hospital, which was my mother's favorite soap opera. And I remember the episode. It was in August. I just turned 11. And it opened with a bit of the day before's episode. And it started with Barnabas coming through a window, comes into the room, and he pulls back the sheets, gets ready to strangle Julia Hoffman. And the lights come on, and Julia Hoffman says, I've been waiting for you, Mr. Collins. And that was my very first episode of Dark Shadows.
That's great. What a great introduction to the show. That's talk about getting hooked. That's a great hook right there. Wow. Great episode. Very cool. Now, what is it to this day? You know, you're all still Dark Shadows fans, and I want to get into your involvement in the fandom as well. But what is it about Dark Shadows that kind of still continues that appealed to you then and still continues to appeal to you?
What I like is it's low tech. Today they have so much CGI and blue screen and all this stuff. Dan Curtis, he kept on filming. Like when Roger Davis walks into Maggie Evans' cottage and slams the door and the curtains fall down, you had to keep on going. You know, when you sort of bat on a string on a fishing hook, okay, or the door opens and you see the hand pushing it. And while Lara Parker said something about we thought it was only going to be shown one time, and now you have blooper tapes. Yeah. But it was well crafted, well done, and it was almost like watching theater every day because Jonathan Frid had that voice, and Louis Edmonds had that nice, crisp Shakespearean type voice, and of course you had Joan Bennett. You had the Grand Dame there. Yeah. And it's hard to believe that for some of them that this was their first show, their first acting experience, but it was so well done and that it will stand the test of time even today, being low tech, but it was great storyline and it was great theater.
Agree. Yeah, absolutely. Schuarah, what about you?
For me, it was very atmospheric. Okay, and before I had said that I liked scary things, my brother and I, and this is in our shadow past. I had given some recollections of this. Basically, what it did is it was a way to be able to escape and go into a fantasy world that was scary and spooky. Okay, and the music set the tone. The visuals were great. The characterization was great. Okay, I was a little kid, so any bloopers or whatever, I didn't pay attention to that. All I knew is that there was Barnabas. All I knew in the lottery period that you had them going and there was the ghost and there was the spookiness of it. And it's something that really kept my attention. And as a little kid, we had short attention spans. However, it was a show that lasted something like maybe 26, 27 minutes, perhaps that. With the commercials, it was shorter. But for me, it just continued and it was long, not too long, but long enough to keep my interest. So it was spooky, atmospheric, a way of escape. Yeah. And even today, it keeps my interest. Sorry to cut you off. Even today, it keeps my interest because it's spooky. It has a great storyline. Okay. It's not like the stories that they have out today at all. It has substance. Okay. It's acted well. Okay, it's clean, okay, and it's a family show, okay, and there are those different fans who we've met with over the years who have whose parents have said that they didn't allow them to watch the show because of religious beliefs, or they thought that it might steer them a certain way. My mother was very religious, but she didn't restrict me in doing that. Okay, she saw it was a family show. There wasn't anything that was going to cause any problems. It was a way of escape and it was entertaining.
Well, for me, I think it's the nostalgia of it as well, because I love most of the shows that I grew up watching as a kid. And I remember when the videos first came out on VHS, my brother-in-law and I were sitting at the kitchen table and we were talking. I said, "Oh, you remember Dark Shadows?" I said, "Sure. I've still got the soundtrack album in the other room." I pulled it out and showed him. And so I went to back at that time it was Blockbusters videos, and I rented them just to remember the show as it used to be, because it's been years since I'd seen the show. A lot of these people had around the New Jersey area, they got to see the show off of PBS, is it?
New Jersey Network.
Yeah. I didn't see them until they came out on video, and then I rented the videos at Blockbuster, and then Blockbuster stopped getting them, and I went to Suncoast and started ordering them. So I ended up getting the whole series. But it was, once you started, I was as hooked as I was back then.
I love it.
I loved it. And my mother was, the funny thing is, back in the days when the show was on the air, my mother would be getting supper ready for when my father came home. And she'd be in the kitchen saying, "What's going on next? What's going on now?" About 20 years later, I got it on VHS. She's saying, "What's going on now? What's going on? Come on, we can stop the tape and watch it."
I love it. I love it. I love that. That just kind of echoed how it was happening in your childhood. That's amazing. I love that. Speaking of family members, like,
yeah.
Schuarah, does your wife Michelle like Dark Shadows? Is she a fan, or are you the sole fan?
She's not really a fan. Okay.
No, okay.
She loves me and tolerates it. Okay, and she's not into the spooky things. She knows Rick and Lorraine, and she's met different fans, and she met Jonathan Frid, and she met different people. She's gone to festivals before.
Yes, she has.
Okay, and you know, she's very friendly, great people person, whatever. But she's not into that sort of thing at all. She thinks it's interesting and all of that, but that's just not her cup of tea.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think she would say.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lorraine, you said, you know, you'd watch it as a kid and none of your friends at school were watching. Or did anybody in your family watch it with you?
No. Everybody was working and going to school. So by the time they came home, it was over.
Okay.
You know, they had no idea what I was talking about.
Moving on, though, from childhood. So show ended in 1971. Did you all go see the movie? Either one of the movies when they came out?
Yes, saw both movies.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. Thoughts on House and Night of Dark Shadows.
Right. House of Dark Shadows, I remember vividly seeing that in the movie theater. Dark Shadows was still on the air at the time. Shortly after that, when they brought out Night of Dark Shadows, the show had already ended. So it wasn't as big a following. I went to see it. I just wasn't happy with the storyline at the time, because the other one told the story of Barnabas and the roots of the show, where the other took another completely different idea, you know, with the Quentin Angelique, and Angelique was not the Angelique that we grew up watching on TV. She was a different character altogether.
Yeah.
And it kind of threw me. By that time I was in high school, and it wasn't as thrilling as the House of Dark Shadows. I loved House of Dark Shadows. I saw that about 5 times at the movie theater.
Wow. I love it. That's awesome. How about you, Schuarah?
Okay, for me, my favorite of the movies is House of Dark Shadows, for a lot of the reasons that Rick just said. But I did not go to the theater, to see it. Okay, I caught it. Secondly, it was either on television, or by video cassette. Okay. And I was hooked on it, you know, as soon as I saw it. I think it was extremely young, when it came out. And so I think at that time we didn't go to see a lot of movies in the theater at that time, unless it was Snoopy and Charlie Brown, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, at Radio City Music Hall. Okay, but I do remember seeing it and I loved it. And it was a little, I don't want to say more extreme, but it was a little grittier, than the TV show. So, you know, you saw more blood. A lot of the different members of the family were turned into vampires, were killed. Yeah. Which I loved. So it was great for me. All right. And it followed the story to a certain extent on a parallel, with the arrival of Barnabas, his pursuit of his reincarnation of Josette, etc., etc. Night of Dark Shadows was totally different. And I can tell you that I was confused on a lot of the part of it. And we know that there's a number of the footage that's missing from the movie. So it being congruent and continuous is not the case. And I hope one day they are going to put in and fill in that lost footage that was on the cutting room floor, because that would, I think, make it a much better movie. Like Rick had said, Angelique's character was different from the Angelique I saw, and recalled from the show. And it was just different. So I didn't see that as interesting. But since it was Dark Shadows, then, you know, I was into it. And Grayson Hall's performance was just great, in it. One of my favorite parts is when she just jumped off the top of of the tower there. Okay. But it's tragic and all, but just her acting and mannerisms was just excellent.
Agree.
Well, seeing the House of Dark Shadows on a big screen, that is the way it should be seen.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge. The music was booming, but it was so majestic with the Lyndhurst mansion and the pictures and the background and everything. And for me, they were just larger than life when I saw it. And I really, really enjoyed it. And even though they deviated a little bit from the storyline and poor Barnabas gets killed in the end, it kept your attention. And especially with Robert Colbert's music, it kept you drawn in. And it was just beautiful because you didn't have a Hollywood set. You had an actual, to me, Lyndhurst is like a palace. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. Now with Night of Dark Shadows, the music was okay. But for me, sometimes the storyline was a little flat because you have Angelique and she's not talking. One of the best features of Lara Parker as Angelique was she was going to put a curse on you or put a spell on you or whatever. And she's floating around in this nightgown and she was threatening and menacing. But when she tells you, I will put a curse on you, you better believe it.
Yeah.
So for me, that fell a little flat. The music was okay. The storyline could have been better. And I agree with Schuarah. I wish they would find that footage and clip it in some kind of way because it did affect the continuity. But the House of Dark Shadows, that was just excellent. 5 stars.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I love both films, but I think Night of Dark Shadows definitely needs that footage that was tragically cut from the film because it just makes so much more sense with those scenes in the movie. And I know Darren Gross has been on a mission for a long time he found the footage. He had the actors come in and dub the audio for it. And it's almost there. I think at this point, it's just a matter of the Warner Brothers, they need to have the interest in doing it. And I have a good feeling about Night of Dark Shadows. They're coming out. I have a good feeling that that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if, kind of a thing. And fingers crossed. I know they still have to redub Grayson Hall. That's one of the things that they did.
Right.
They had to.
Well, it's good that they dubbed in Laura. Okay.
Yes.
Because she's no longer with us, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's good that they got her to dub in the parts there.
Yeah.
That thought came to mind where you were talking about that. And so, agreed. Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, same here.
One thing about House of Dark Shadows that I remember at the time, they were filming in Lockwood Matthews Mansion in Norwalk. Word got out that they were going to be filming there. They printed it in the Hartford Courant, and kids showed up at the mansion. I didn't go down there, but I seen pictures in the newspaper of showing kids milling around.
I love it.
While they were filming.
I love that. That's great. Oh, I love that. It's so cool. It's just kind of echoes what was happening at the studio too, with all the kids hanging out outside the studio. Then they just kind of went over there and hung out. Did any of you get to go to the studio as kids at all?
No, that was too far for me.
No. I wasn't aware that you could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And because I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and so it's just a quick train ride.
Yeah.
Right over, and I could have gone over there, but I didn't realize that you could.
Yeah, and you didn't make it over there either, Lorraine?
No, never.
No. Yeah. I wonder, that's an experience I would have loved to have had it, if I could have, just to be there just one day.
We've talked to a lot of the people that did do that, the kids that frequent the studio, and we've seen the pictures. I've got several pictures that I got from fans that had been the kids that hung around the studio, and they've got some fantastic stories.
Yeah, my friend Bill Urey and his sisters were studio kids. They would go periodically, and he sent me some really cool pictures. And I keep trying to get him to come onto the podcast, and hopefully he will do it at some point because he doesn't participate in fandom or anything like that. I knew him. My husband was friends with him, and I am too. So he tell me, I used to go to the Dark Shadows studio. I was like, what? Really? So he sent me some pictures of like David Selby and a few other of the actors. So
stories like this from different people, the kids who went back at that time, would be good as more information. And Bob, I hope you're listening to this, Bob Eisel, in your next volume, okay, of our Shadowed Past. So I think that would be good content. Okay, and I think that a lot of us would like to be able to read those stories.
He did that in the volume 1. There's a section, studio kit section in volume 1 of our Shadowed Past. And for those who don't have, but I would love to read more of those experiences. If you don't have our Shadowed Past volume 2, you can get in touch with Bob. I think he still has copies, so I can put his email address. I think it's bobubis59@gmail.com, and I will put it up on the screen too. On the video version, you can drop him a line if you want a copy, because they're magnificent, beautiful books that Bob, Jeff Kenny, I know Mark Rainey also did the layout on the first one. A lot of people contributed to it, including my guests here today. I did as well contribute to both volumes. And there it is for the video. There's volume 1.
There's volume 1.
And the 3 of you are in volume 2. So there we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, with Cindy Yates's nice covers there, really beautiful. I want to get to Rick's book in just a little bit, but before I get to that, I want to talk about how you all discovered the Dark Shadows fandom. So Dark Shadows ends in 1971. A Night of Dark Shadows comes out, and then that's it. And then Dark Shadows did go into syndication in starting in 75. So I want to go around, starting with Lorraine, Schuarah, and Rick. How did you discover the Dark Shadows fandom?
I wasn't even looking for it. I'm a respiratory therapist by profession. And I was attending a respiratory therapy conference in a mid-Manhattan hotel. And I had to leave early because my feet were hurting because I was wearing some brand new shoes. I was going to go home and change them. And I went and saw this desk. It was a table full of flyers, and it had Jonathan Frid and Linda Blair.
Oh.
And I missed them altogether.
But
then it had some information about a Dark Shadows gathering or something. And I looked it up, and it was at Hilton Gateway Hotel in Newark, New Jersey. And I think it was 1987. That was the first one I attended. And Joan Bennett was there, and she was so nice.
Wow.
And someone asked her, well, who is Victoria Winter's father? And she said, that is none of your business.
I love that.
And back then our program was like, like they had a sheet of paper and this, that, and the other. It was just, but to see them up close and in person, it was just amazing. And after that, I've been attending ever since.
Wonderful. Very cool. Did you go to the West Coast ones as well, or mostly the East Coast?
I've been to LA, I've been to Hollywood, I've been to Vegas. We did it in Brooklyn, where I think I went to at least 5 cities.
Wow.
And I haven't been to, I didn't go to this past July. And the last one was at the Paley Center. But yeah, I tried to, I think I've only missed 4 of them.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's great. How about you, Schuarah? I know you have your list. You showed me this incredible list, this laminated of every Dark Shadows festival and event. There it is for the video version. Schuarah's holding it up on the screen. It's like a spreadsheet with whether you attended or not. You have the whole list, and you have the check.
Right.
So talk about
exactly. And Guy Haynes, if you're listening, I am going to send you a copy of this because you asked me for it before. But anyway, I had gotten involved with this. I was in college, okay, and this was 1983, I believe, that I found out that they were having festivals, okay, but it wasn't in an area that I can go to because I believe at that time it might have been in California. I'm in error. That was in Newark. Okay. Prior to that, it was the ShadowCon, and those were in California. Anyway, in 1984, to correct myself, I saw a flyer in college about Dark Shadows Festival. And I was like, Dark Shadows? How many people are going to come out to this? And I was like, forget it. I'm not going to go to that. And so, I remember that over the year, and I was like, you know what? If this comes up again, I'm going to go to it. And so the next time I was able to go was 1986. And that was my first one. And that was at the Hilton Gateway in Newark. Okay. And I met Joan Bennett. Okay. And Jonathan Frid. as well as others there, and it was just marvelous. And I was just hooked on it going to the festivals because I had not seen all of the episodes of Dark Shadows. In those days, they had a video room, and in the video room, it specifically was dedicated to playing episodes of Dark Shadows on the old-fashioned television sets. We didn't have flat screens back then, okay? And they used video cassettes or wherever they got the footage from.
With the commercials.
Yeah, with the commercials, the original commercials. Yeah. And so it was very nostalgic, but there was a number of us just sitting there watching the episodes. So you had to choose between going to the video room, going to the dealer's room, or going and seeing the performers be able to give their recollections and get autographs. And so it was very interesting. There was a lot of things going on. I found that very exciting, and it was very different from my other love, which is Star Trek, and which is not quite like that. But I was hooked on it, and I thought, I'm going to continue to go to this. And I just been going to the different festivals ever since, throughout the time that they ended it, which was the 50th in 2016, and also the special in 2019 at the Paley Center in New York. I've gone to just about all of the ones in New York. They did have a couple, like I said, in Newark, New Jersey. They had one or two in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is not too far away from the Newark airport. Yeah. And I missed the one in Dallas. Okay. Yeah, and I've gone to about maybe 5 or 6 in LA. Okay, as well. And so I've just enjoyed it. Once again, it's because I loved Dark Shadows. I loved being able to meet the actors and such. They're wonderful people. They're down to earth. Okay. And we'll get into some of the stories and recollections, but I just want to make it very brief, with regards to that. And also, we made friends at the festivals. Look at these two. I met them at the festivals. Yeah. Okay. And we've known each other well over 30 years.
That's great.
Okay. And so we're good friends. Okay. And it's because of Dark Shadows.
That's wonderful.
And so that's the common denominator, and how I got into it and why I keep going, because it's just exciting.
Before I get to Rick on this, you mentioned the Star Trek conventions, and that's another passion of yours. I would like to hear the contrast between going to a Star Trek convention and a Dark Shadows festival.
Okay.
What's the difference, and what's similar?
Okay, it's a geographical bias, I think. All right, and most of the ones that I've attended conventions for Star Trek, have been put on by Creation. Okay, and they're in New York. There's a certain type of culture or atmosphere with that, in that it's run with a police force like the Gestapo.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And you don't have the freedom, that you have at the Dark Shadows festivals or at Chiller Theater Expo, which is another place.
Okay, which Kate Jackson is doing an appeance there coming up.
Exactly, and we're definitely going to see her in that one. I'm so excited about that. Okay, it's just it was not tasteful. Okay, that's not to say that not all Star Trek conventions are distasteful. That's not true. Slanted Fedora, great outfit. They had put on some festivals before. Went to one with my mother, in Philadelphia years ago, which was wonderful. That was 1998, I believe it was. And also there've been the Las Vegas ones that they put together, which is the big, like, Grand Slam ones, in which I got to meet the different casts from The Next Generation and also Deep Space Nine, etc. Going back right quick, I've met all of the original cast members from Star Trek. I got all their autographs. Wonderful people, all of them, save one, and I won't mention his name. Wonder who that could be. But anyway, they're very wonderful people, and even though they're big stars and all of that, they were able to relate to us, and they heard our stories about going into science. Like I say, I'm into pharmaceuticals. Part of the science, and I was going to go into medicine, but I deviated from that one in pharmaceuticals, was because of part of that, me wanting to go into it was because of Dr. McCoy. And so therefore, DeForest Kelley and also, of course, Nichelle Nichols into science.
Yeah.
I saw a Black person in science.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that helped me, okay, want to also continue in that area. So it served as a place where there were friendly people as far as the actors were concerned. I also did meet some nice fans. Okay, I don't want to say it's all gloom and doom. It isn't. Some nice fans. It was a place where I had a lot of excitement, and it was a place that I could really show my love for science fiction.
Yeah.
This is the parallel between Dark Shadows and between Star Trek. With Dark Shadows, it's horror with some science fiction. With Star Trek, it's science fiction. Okay, they're both fantasy. It's an escape for both of them.
Yes.
Okay, with both, I got a chance to meet the stars for both, and they were really nice. Okay, and also with both, I got a chance to meet fandom and such with regards to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so and to the point in which my wife Michelle, she's also really not into Star Trek. Okay, but her mother was really into it, and I'm into it. So she says she's a fan by association. Okay, so, and she'll laugh at this when she watches this podcast. Okay, with regards to it. So that's some of the comparisons. Okay, between it and some a little bit of the criticism I have for the Star Trek, but I love Star Trek. And once again, the different people who put on conventions and all of the actors and such, very nice people, and they show up year after year for different conventions, even now, for the fans.
Yeah.
They don't have to do it, but they do it. And it lifts their spirits in a similar way that Lara Parker had said before, that she felt all the love and admiration from all the different people. That lifts you, that's a great feeling for you to have, that people, thousands of people are pulling for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I was just curious about that, like what the difference was in between the two. But yeah, thank you for those insights. And Rick, how about you? How did you rediscover Dark Shadows, I should say?
Rediscovering Dark Shadows, like I said earlier, my brother-in-law and I were sitting at the kitchen table, and we were looking through the Suncoast Video magazine.
Oh, right. Yes. Yep.
And they had the Dark Shadows thing. Well, I went to Blockbusters and started renting them. And at the end, they had a little blurb for further information about Dark Shadows, write to this address. And it was here in New Jersey. And so I wrote just for the heck of it, and they sent me a flyer. And the lineup sounded like a one-time deal. It was going to be held in LA. It was 1991. And I thought, this many stars, I figured this is only going to be a one-shot deal. So I got to go. So I went to that one, and that was my very first one in 91. That's when I met Bob and Lorraine and Schuarah here.
Great. That's a good one too. That was a huge attendance at that 91 festival.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And it had both the 91 cast and the original cast. Because I remember recently I saw Adrian Paul, and we started talking about the very first time I met him was at a Dark Shadows festival in 91. And we had discussed being on the original series, and I had said that later on I had gotten his autograph and picture, and it was just right after that he had done Highlander. Yes. And everybody saying, where did you get a picture of Adrian Paul? I says, I went to a Dark Shadows festival.
Yeah. I always wonder what he would have been like as Quentin, because that's supposedly what was going to happen if they had continued. They were going to cast him as Quentin. What a shame that show didn't get the chance to kind of develop. Too short-lived for sure, the 91 show.
He was such a nice guy. Such a nice, very approachable.
Oh yeah,
all that, no airs, no prop. He was.
But all the stars from Dark Shadows,
not all, but
most of them. Yes, I'm sorry.
Of the 91 show, not all from the original or from the 91.
Both.
Okay.
One or two are a little
they're human. So you got a spectrum. Okay,
sure.
But I'd say 95%,
right,
97%. Okay, we're really nice people.
Yeah. Well, let's speaking of nice people, let's hear about some of those memories, some favorite memories of attending the festivals, with the fans or with the actors, with the crew. And Lorraine, I know I was reading your all of your entries in Our Shadowed Past too, and you had some fun stories like about Cy Tomashoff and some of the different Roger
We
Davis and
saw
John
Cy.
Carlin. And can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite
We saw
memories?
Cy in California, and we had one of Kathryn Leigh Scott's books from him to autograph. We were behind the stage, and his wife was like, "Cy, look at this! You had hair." And we met the guy who played the werewolf, Alex
Stevens.
Alex Stevens.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the first time I saw him in person, and I didn't realize, because David Selby and Alex Stevens.
Yes, yeah.
There's a difference.
and he was very nice to talk to.
Yeah.
There was a time after Lara Parker's, one of her sons got married, and she kept walking around saying, "I want to be a grandmother. I want to be a grandmother." Well, when she finally had her grandbaby boy, she was over the moon with that. And one time they had an auction, and she had done the auction with this little piece of jewelry called the Moonstone. She said it inspired her to write one of her novels, and she was waving it up at the auction, and the auction was going crazy. They were coming up with all sorts of money, and I'm like, it's just a little piece of plastic. And then she said, if you wave this around, your lady friend will want to. Well, the hands went up on that one too. And there was this guy, I think he was from Texas.
Yeah.
And he didn't win the auction, and he sat back and cried. But let me tell you about these two. We were in California with Michael Stroka. And we were in the bar later on, and Roger Davis was there, and he had to leave. But Michael Stroka, he has an antique car collection.
Yeah.
And he had all these pictures. And these two sounded like nighttime owls. Every time he showed a picture, they were like, "Ooh." And they showed another picture, and "Ooh." And my car was in this, standing on there like, "Ooh." And Michael Stroka, we had to stay there suffocating because he was a chain smoker. So back then you could smoke in the bars and everything, but these two were sounding like pair of owls. Ooh.
So it was Michael Stroka's car that studios would rent cars from him, right?
He had an agent for his cars.
He
That's
said
amazing.
the agent for the cars worked better than the agent that he had.
Yeah.
But that was some of the moments where you can be alone with them and sit down and talk and have fun. There was one Dark Shadow star who had a stalker, and that had to be addressed. But in the meanwhile, you could just sit back and kick back with them. And Diana Millay, she came to La Bar Bat, which was the recording studio for the original Dark Shadows TV show on 57th Street.
Yeah.
Diana Millay had the greatest legs. She would always come out and wear shorts, and I was like, "Dad, I'm doing Pilates and I can't get that." And she used to like to tell like spooky stories, and she had the little Egyptian scarabs and this, that, and that. She was just fun, but she always got your attention because I believe that she gave the cruise that Guy went on, the cruise to Egypt or something like that.
And Romania, Transylvania, and the Egypt. She did a
I wanted to go on one of those because she was the perfect person, because all you saw was the phoenix and the fire. Yeah, that's the way she was. But she was nice and approachable. And another time we were at one of the conferences, I think it was the one in Brooklyn. Ben Martin, Kathryn's ex-husband. And he would just sit up there and talk to us about the photography, because he used to come to the studio and take all those pictures. And so she had all these wonderful pictures to put in the book. But he would sit down and talk about some different people, and it was always funny. Mm-hmm. That's the thing; they were always doing funny stuff.
That's great.
So mentions Mike Stroka, and the funny thing, after that point, we'd stay up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
After the bars closed, he would, first of all, we have the autograph lines, and he started walking the autograph line so he could hit the bar. And he'd always say, lean over to Schuarah and I, as he sees us going through the line, he says, "I'll meet you guys in the bar. I can't wait." And he'd sign and go in the bar. And the stories the man would tell, it was just unbelievable. I remember there was one story he told about, he had an Indian motorcycle, and they had like a club of actors that had motorcycles. And I think Charles Bronson was one of them, and big names, McQueen, right?
Okay.
And they were riding together. Mike says, all of a sudden, a motorcycle cop pulls him over. And he says, "You guys cannot ride 4 abreast." And I think it was Steve McQueen spoke up and says, "We're sorry, officer." He says, "Wait, let me finish. You cannot ride for abreast without a police escort." And the policeman followed them. And here's Steve McQueen and I think
maybe it was James Coburn.
Yeah, James Coburn was one of them.
Yeah.
And they had about 6 or 7, big name stars riding down in the motorcycle police escort. It was funny.
That's hilarious.
One night at the Marriott Marquis, we were trying to leave, and Roger Davis was selling those bags that he had. He had the bags and T-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
And John Karlen came in. Now, a lot of times, John Karlen used to be quiet, and we were always waiting to see if he was ever going to wear long pants because he always came in shorts.
Yeah.
The two of them got into this little banter. We couldn't leave because they wouldn't shut up.
What were they talking about? Like, was it they were performing, or were they just having a conversation?
They were just, they just wouldn't shut up. They kept on saying, and Roger they'd be like, "And how do you do?" And Johnny would be like, "Well, sir, I am fine. And how are you today?" And they just kept going back and forth. Somebody has recorded this.
So it was like an improv skit almost. Like an improv thing.
It was like a who's on first skit between the two of them. And we could not leave. We're tired. We've been standing on our feet all day on autograph lines. And the two of them, and we're sitting up there laughing and like, oh gosh, this is before the cell phones where we could record it. Yeah. But the two of them, and it was nice to see them like out of their element, because in the beginning when Johnny Karlen would come, especially when we had World Trade Center, he was kind of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was in Vegas, he came out like King Johnny is here and wearing shorts. Kathryn was like, we're waiting to see when he's going to wear long pants again. But he came in like it was a coronation. He came in and he was just smiling at everybody. And when it came time to do the autographs, he was sitting outside and we were in the Vegas hotel. And these girls were coming up to him. "Oh, can I take a picture?" And he said, "Sure." They're sitting on his lap taking pictures. They're sitting next to him. He's hugging all of them. And Jim Pearson comes walking out. "John, we need you to get on the autograph line." He said, "Okay, I'll be in it." And some more people kept coming by. And so, I mean, it was almost like watching Hugh Hefner in action. And he just had women. And he was just hugging and taking pictures and smiling and this. And Jim came out again. "I need you to get on the line." He said, "It's okay, I'm coming." I don't know if he ever got on that line or not, but it was nice to see them out of their element,
Yeah, sure, yeah. What about you, Schuarah? Any fun memories?
No, I've got lots of stories. Okay, okay, and I want to make a couple of comments. Okay, they're those people, very sweet, wonderful people. David Selby, Chris Pennock, okay, and also a number of other ones. But Lorraine Crawford, yeah. There was a time at the festivals when you didn't see David Selby because he was so busy in Hollywood at the time.
Yeah,
he was doing Falcon Crest, and at that time, Jim Pearson had set it up so that there would be luncheons with David. Okay, these are at the California festivals. Okay, that I attended, and I attended 2 of them, and I got to meet David at that time. He was so gracious. Okay, he plays such a bad guy villain. Okay, in these pictures, but he's the sweetest Virginia gentleman. It's just amazing. Took time out, took pictures with you, would sign whatever you wanted to, and even remembers you at the next gathering. And he was just such a sweetheart, such a wonderful guy. Another person always has been Kathryn Leigh Scott. She's the sweetest woman. She acknowledges you, remembers you. She's the queen of books and everything. She came out, my scrapbook memory of Dark Shadows, that came out, I remember, in 1986.
Yes.
Okay. The first festival I came to, I made sure that I got that signed, and I've got all sorts of people to sign that book, including a rare one, Abe Vigoda.
Oh, we got him.
We got a story about that because, for all of you Godfather fans out there, and he's a big one, okay, Abe Vigoda is, he's a big guy. Tessio, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Abe Vigoda, this was his first and I think only festival that he came in. I forget what year it was. Okay. Charles, I know you're going to know what it is. Okay. but Charles Ellis, I know he's gonna know what it is. Okay, but he came in to the festivals, and I had a way of being able to. Lorraine and I had a way of being able to kind of go around and walk around and see who we could see while other people were inside doing what they were doing. We saw Abe Vigoda come in, and we said, "There's Abe Vigoda over there."
I had my book ready,
and so we went over and we started talking to him and got his autograph. Now, he was real surprised because so many people showed up for Dark Shadows, okay? Because for him, this is a little part, you know, was Ezra Braithwaite.
It was Ezra Braithwaite, and then he was Otis Green in 1840.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he didn't have a lot of screen time with those characters. And so for him, he didn't think that many people saw him. Well, he was wrong because we saw him and we were very excited. And we approached him and talked to him. We were excited. He was excited and all of that. And, he did not sit in a line to autograph. So the only way you could get his autograph was to go get him at that time.
He was in the dealer's room.
Yeah.
He had walked into the dealer's room with his daughter, and they sat down, and Lorraine and Schuarah and I were the first ones to spot it.
Yeah.
And we started talking. And I had my Godfather book with me, and I had him sign my Godfather book. And I said I could quote every line by heart. He says, "Can you quote one of the lines from me?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "It's going to be Michael's going to meet with in Lewis Restaurant in the Bronx. Anybody know it?" And Abe Vigoda would say, "Yeah, it's perfect for us. Good food. Everybody minds his own business. They got an old-fashioned toilet, the boxing chain type." He says, "Maybe we can take the gun behind it." He says, "My God, you know every line of it." It was one of my favorite movies. So he signed one of the books I had from that.
That's really cool.
Yes, it was Abe Vigoda and Conrad Bain.
Yes.
Okay. We saw him as well too. And he was really shocked that there was so many people. And so when he was on stage, he's looking out, looking at people. He can't believe all these people.
And that we remembered him.
Yeah, from Dark Shadows.
Now, the funny thing on that one is they had a question and answer period. Nobody was asking him any questions. It was his first time there.
Yeah.
So I asked him the average question that everybody asks, what is your memory of Dark Shadows? And he says, "I remember when they sent me in." He says, "Have you been killed by the werewolf yet?"
Yeah.
And he said, No. So he went in. He says, "I did have an idea about having two black kids on the show, but Dan wouldn't buy it."
Right. Yeah. I saw that on video. That's on YouTube.
The funny thing about that is they showed the clip of him saying that, but they didn't hear me ask the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They cut that part out.
Oh, yeah. I saw it with have you been eaten by the werewolf? I love that they brought him back because he was in those very early episodes as Mr.
Oh, yeah, the very first episode.
Yeah, and then he's back in the Chris Jennings werewolf storyline. They brought back the same actor. I thought that was really cool. And of course,
right. And I have to mention Marie Wallace because she is so sweet and so nice, wonderful woman, and remembers our names and is so glad to see us every single time we go to see her. Gracious woman, wonderful. She loved my mom. My mom loved her. My mom passed away 4 years ago, but she would come to the festivals. Oh, thank you. From time to time, she would come. And so she loved Marie, and Marie loved her. And, it is just very good. So once again, these are people who are nice and sweet, and they recognize other people as human beings. So, I mean, it's just wonderful. There are others. Okay, but I'll stop here. Okay.
But also, when you see them out of their element, like Nancy Barrett did a show on Don't Tell Mama at one of the festivals.
Yeah.
And we saw it. She was singing and dancing.
Yes.
And she did that at the festival, but this was more an intimate view. And then we saw Marie. I saw her. She did a play called The Chislers. And I saw her when she did Love Letters with Larry Storch. And every year she would come to Larry Storch's birthday party at the Metropolitan Room. And I would be there. And she always had these good stories to tell. Plus, Marie Wallace came to some of my Toastmasters speech contests.
Oh, yeah.
She was cheering me on.
That's so nice. That's so cool.
She's very big in that.
Yeah.
So it was, so we have established relationships. Like one time for Halloween, my birthday, James Storm sang happy birthday to me.
Oh,
And when I saw him later on, he said something, and I was just, because I was still stunned that he sang to me.
yeah.
It was just, we just have, they're just treasures. They're just wonderful,
Yeah.
sweethearts.
You mentioned Marie, as she and Kathryn too, and Sharon Smith-Lentz. They're going to be doing an appearance at the Sleepy Hollow Film Festival, Sleepy Hollow International Film
Yes.
Festival in October. They're doing like an East Coast Jonathan Frid centenary. It's part of an overall event. It's going to be like a 90-minute, I think, segment. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's about 90 minutes. But they're going to have a panel with those 3 actresses from Dark Shadows. Are the 3 of you going to that?
But also we're going to Lyndhurst first. Lyndhurst opens up at 9:30 and it's decorated for Halloween.
Yeah.
And then Schuarah's going to treat us to a big lunch. And then we're going to go to the film festival for Jonathan Frid. Right, Schuarah?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's on video now. It's on audio. So there's a record of it.
Documented now. No
It's
problem.
documented.
Yeah, we missed going to the California one, and I really wanted to be there. Okay, for that, but it was during the July 4th weekend, and that was just it couldn't be able to do it. I know you went. Okay, saw some video of it, and it was heard it was very nice.
It was,
and so I think some video from David Selby is going to be played there, and maybe some excerpts others are going to be too. And so it'll be good for us to go to this, because honoring Jonathan Frid, he was a very gracious man. Okay, somebody who went through what he went through. Okay, who was as intelligent as he was. Okay. He was very, very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. He was like one of the #1 cheerleaders for the show on the New Jersey network. Okay. He would come on and do commercials for Dark Shadows to watch during a time in which you couldn't see it anywhere else. This was before videotapes. It was on New Jersey network. And he would be very gracious and open. And he would spend time and sign whatever you wanted him to sign and talk with you. And he didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. And he did not charge for every autograph. Okay. Back in those days. So, we have to repay his memory. Sure. Okay. Because we love that man.
Yeah. One of the festivals I went to was the one where he came back to the festivals after not having gone for a while. And Larry Storch did show up at that one too. I think the voice actor Wally Wingert brought Larry Storch there. They reunited because they of course did Arsenic and Old Lace. But when Jonathan walked out on stage with the cane hobbling, and then he did that twirling thing, and the audience went bananas. I mean, it was such an explosion of applause and cheering when you could just feel the adulation in that room. It was wonderful. It was just a wonderful thing to see. Now, Rick, I want to ask you, you got involved with the Collins Association and these Halloween events. And when we were at Seaview, you were telling me all kinds of stories about that, because you got actors involved in doing these.
There was
through the haunted house and Lockwood. Talk about this whole thing. And I know Helen Samaras was involved with this.
She and Ed Lambisi started the Collins Association first. And I got involved. We've been friends, and I went to the very first one.
This is one of the mugs.
Yeah.
Okay, that came from the Collins Association. So we've all been to the event, and I just want to show a prop. Please.
So this is a separate thing. This was a separate thing from the festivals. This was a unique thing. Second
season I started working. And you mentioned the haunted room, which became a big deal. And it started out, we were renting out Lockwood Matthews Mansion in Norwalk. And they couldn't get everybody to go to the basement to see where the coffins were in the movie. So they raffled off tickets for people to go down. Well, Ed knew that I had the Aging Barnabas mask. And he wanted me to put it on, and they had this box down there, and he wanted me to pop out. Well, Chris Pennock came up to me, and he says, I think that's a great idea. You mind if I help out? I says, sure, why not? He says, I'm going to take my turtleneck, I'll pull it up over my head, and I'll pretend that I'm a headless man. Diana Millay comes over and says, you guys, that's a great idea. He says, she's got this vampire mask, so she was going to put that on. So the three of us went to the basement and stationed ourselves. We're waiting for it, and we're talking back and forth down there, cracking each other up. Finally, they came down, and we all, each individually, shocked the people. And Ed loved it. He says, "We got to do it so everybody can see this." And I says, "Well, that's a nice idea, but as a fan, I would love to see them kind of reenact scenes from Dark Shadows, as their characters." And so I came up with the idea of the Haunted Room, in which we improv. Everything was improv. There was no time for us to learn lines or anything. And the first year that we did the Haunted Room itself, Lara, Diane Millay as Lara, she does the Phoenix and tells the story of the Phoenix. And there was a portrait Bob Itzel had done. You saw it probably over at the. Anyway, we had it above the fireplace, and she would tell the story. And then there was another one where I play Barnabas, and Roger Davis is hunting in the graveyard for Dr. Lang's experiment for body parts. And we've got all kinds of, and he's got a heart in his hand. "Clark, what are you doing with that heart?" He says, "Well, everybody's got to have heart." And then we started cracking each other and said, "We got to have heart." And then the next one would be Chris Pennock would do the Jekyll Hyde bit.
Oh, that was funny.
The Longworth and
pretending he was drinking the experiment, and all of a sudden he would strangle, and we turn out the lights. He would put on a mask, and we turn up the lights, and he would be the Hyde character. And then the other one, Denise Nickerson and David Selby. We got a stick phone, the old-fashioned phone that she used in the show, and she says, "Quentin, I don't want to play the game, Quentin." And all of a sudden, David Selby's holding a flashlight, and he turns it on under his face. It's the scariest thing you can see. He had that glaze like Quentin did as the ghost. And she kept on going, "I don't want to play the game, Quentin." And he got the angrier and angrier look in his face. It was.
I love it.
But we did it for years, and recreating. The last one was the best. And like I said, I shout out to Terry Crawford. She helped us every step of the way. Anything we needed, she was right there helping us. And can't say enough about that one.
You had her. She played Beth in one of the things, right?
She recreated Beth, and Marie did Crazy Jenny.
Yeah,
I showed you the pictures of that.
Yes,
she had the twin doll babies.
Yeah,
I bought all this. I rented costumes. I bought the babies and the props. I made a head of Judah Zachary for Jim Storm they reenact with, and we had I started out as the plot was Barnabas had been turned back into a vampire, and he's trapped in a chain coffin. I had some plastic chains over the coffin. And Ed is dressed as Quentin. He releases Barnabas from the coffin. And Barnabas wants to be free from the curse, and he uses the I Ching wands. And he has the fans come along with him through the I Ching door. And the first thing you come on is Widow's Hill and the Eagle's Heel Cemetery. And we got the graves, and we got the hand of Jeremiah. It was the hand of Jeremiah. Remember the scene where his
the hand comes out of the grave? Yeah, yes, yep.
Well, we had that, and it was one of those fake hands, and it had battery operated, so the fingers wiggled. Always. And then we went around to the other end, and I had to make sure everybody stayed away from the walls, because all the walls were tables stacked on top of each other with, tablecloth. And so we would have everybody reenact skits. And at the end, I said, I thanked the people for freeing me from the curse. And all of a sudden, this evil, wicked laugh comes and says, "You'll never be free of me, Barnabas." And this light comes on, and it's Lara Parker.
Oh, I love it.
Racing over to me and pretends to bite me. There was another one where I'm by the coffin, and I showed you pictures of that, I believe.
Yeah.
It's in that book. We at the end, we had already gone through it, and she had already changed clothes, and we were taking our bows, and somebody says to Laura, "Bite him," and we couldn't keep a straight face. You see the picture? It's in the second book with my story.
Our shadow past.
Our Shadows
Shadow
Past.
Past. Yep.
See a picture of me with Laura, and the two of us are cracking up because we can't keep a straight. But it was an unbelievable time, and these stars they went along with everything we came up with. And at that time, even the festivals were not asking the actors to act.
Yeah.
They would just come on stage and do question and answer periods. We were the first ones to get them involved in reenacting scenes and stuff.
Right.
So it was something different.
And
It was something
yeah,
different.
and you told me one story that I love too, that you had to clear out the people for the next group to come through, and people didn't want to leave, and Marie Wallace stepped up and took care of that as Crazy Jenny.
Marie Wallace's hair was wild. It was just all over the place. And then she had on this beautiful black dress that you got for her. It was just wonderful. But when you hear them do other things, like David Selby did his poetry reading on his My Mother's Autumn, or Jonathan Frid used to come to New York, and that's what he started doing his one-man shows in the public library, and he was funny. And then we went out to Hofstra. I didn't know how I was going to get out there, but thanks to my friend, got out to Hofstra University. This woman stands up in the audience and she says, "Oh, Jonathan, I coiffed and combed and sprayed your hair." It was Edith Biles.
Tilles. Yeah.
Yes. And so she
great.
ran out to the stage to give him a hug. And he was just surprised, because she just popped up out of nowhere.
I love that.
There was another time they came to Connecticut. A friend of mine, Karlen.
Cortland Hull, from the Witch's Dungeon.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
he's a good friend of mine.
Cortland, yeah.
And one year at his house, he had Dick Smith. And we all know that Dick Smith did the makeup for Dark Shadows.
Nice man. Mm-hmm.
Or the old man Barnabas. The old man Barnabas.
Yeah, he did the aging Barnabas for him.
Yep.
And he showed up at the Witch's Dungeon, and he did. He had autographs and everything, and talked with us about Dark Shadows. It was fantastic time. I had people coming to my house to sleep on the floor to go the next day to the Witch's Dungeon.
Yeah, and for those who haven't been to the Witch's Dungeon, it's worth stopping. It's in Connecticut. It's a great classic horror museum. And Cortland Hull is, of course, the great nephew of Henry Hull, the Werewolf of London.
Right.
Cortland's just a wonderful person, really fun. I miss seeing him. I used to see him at usually at Monster Bash and stuff like that, and I would chat with him. But I did.
He used to come to Chiller too.
Yeah, he used to show up a lot of Chiller.
Yeah, but it's worth checking out.
He has a new place in Plainville, Connecticut. If people want to go out to see by appointment, he's open all year round now. It's not just for Halloween, but by appointment, he will set up a tour for you.
Yeah, I was there last year. I did go by last year, and he has that piece of equipment from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, that flashing light thing. It's been in so many movies, and it was really
cool. It was in
cool
the Fly. That was where it originated from.
Yes, yeah. Now, another thing I want to bring up too is, we mentioned at the top of the show, this book, Dark Shadows, A View of Collinsport, which is extremely rare now. I managed to get a copy of this actually on eBay. It's very rare, and it's really cool. It covers all of the Dark Shadows filming locations, or for the exterior footage on the show, from the movies, from the 91 series, and you co-wrote this, Rick, with Shelley Weiss Lossy. Talk about this book. How did this come about?
Well, I just didn't know a lot about the sites to do with Dark Shadows, and fans were always asking, "Where's this? Where's that? Where's the other?" Well, during one of the question and answer periods at the festival, I asked the late Marcy Robbins why nobody wrote a book on it. She says, "Why don't you write a book on it?" And I says, "Well, I barely finished high school. I said, I know pretty much where these sites are, but I'm not really a writer. And Bob Itzel was a good friend of mine, and he knew that Shelley was a writer. And he says, she wants to do a book on Dark Shadows. So why don't you two collaborate? So I met her at the Collins Association's first Halloween party. And we both lived in Connecticut. So that was maybe 20-minute ride from each other's house. She lived in Bethany and I live in New Britain, Connecticut. But I thought about it and I says, most of these places are close by. I says, matter of fact, I flipped out the first time I saw the pre-Barnabas episodes and saw the Griswold Inn for the first time. I said, my God, that's the Griswold Inn. I only live 20 minutes from there. I used to eat there all the time as a kid. And that was as most people know, it was the Collinsport Inn. And most of the places are within, the furthest away would be Newport. And that's about 2 hours from my house. So we decided, we collaborate on the book. And it took about 5 years before we got everything together. And I did most of the illustrations you see of the maps, the inside maps, I drew myself. But we went many, many times to these different places to see where they were and get their, locations. And I remember we finally got the book published 2001, I believe it was, because we were in the World Trade Center 2 days later.
Yep.
Well,
2002.
2002 was it?
There, so
yeah.
Get the book.
Well, it was 2001 that we first started selling the books.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I remember we were in the Trade Center just weeks before the Trade Center came down, and we were selling the book at that time. So that's how I know what date it was that we did, even though it says in the book 2002. But
I see. Okay. So you had
but it was
copies of the
September pre-selling of them, I guess.
Yeah.
We were at the festival in it was August of that year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really cool book. It is extremely rare these days, but sometimes
I couldn't believe it when people told me that it's a collector's item. I would have never guessed.
Yeah.
I'd been away from Dark Shadows for a while until I got together with Bob again, and when I got to the festival, somebody wanted to buy my copy. I says, I wrote the thing. I wasn't going to sell it.
Yeah. As to kind of wrap things up here, I want to look a little bit at the future and hear from each of you. What are your hopes, I guess, for the future of Dark Shadows? What would you like to see in terms of new Dark Shadows content?
You start.
Well, at the festival, I had talked about redoing the book because there were some glaring errors in the book. I remember one of them being we stated in the book we were going by two different people's remembrances of Night of Dark Shadows, in which the scene where Thayer David attacks Roger Davis before going to the house.
Yeah.
And Kathryn Leigh Scott said it was in Terrytown, and Roger Davis had told us at the time that it was in Norwalk, and Shelley wanted to go with Roger Davis's. Come to find out, I found out from other friends that it was in Terrytown, that scene took place.
I see.
But other than that, and there were prices. I mean, the book is really outdated because, like I said, it was late 90s when we wrote the book, and Shelley put in the prices for, different places, for admission and for the staying at the Griswold Inn and stuff like that. And and some of the places are gone now, like the Three Bears is no longer in existence.
No,
that was the
sadly, Shelley also has passed away since the publication of the book. So
that's where I've been having trouble. I wanted to try to get a hold of Shelley's relatives before I redid the book and but as yet I haven't been able to tie things up with them.
Yeah. Okay. So of the future Dark Shadows, you'd like to do a reprint of the book with updated content. But what about Schuarah? How about I should just put it this way: should there be new Dark Shadows content, or should we just be content with what we have? And if there is new Dark Shadows content in terms of a show or stories, what would you want to see, if anything?
This is a tricky question, okay, because I do like the 1991, okay, Dark Shadows. Okay, what they did with that was good. All right. And I would say that they probably should do one. However, we do not want another Johnny Depp like movie situation ever again.
No.
Okay. It's a serious topic. It should not be done as a comic, spoof, or whatever else. No. And I think most Dark Shadows fans will agree with that. So I'd like to see it, but it needs to be done in the type of serious type of atmosphere as Dan Curtis did it, okay, for both the original and for the 91 series. Now, in particular, what I would like to see would be Vicky's reaction on coming back from the past, knowing that Barnabas is a vampire, and how she deals with that. Because I don't think that has ever been done before. Okay, and so this would be kind of going in the spirit of the old, but having it so that it's maybe something fresh and going kind of forward with that is concerned. So I'd like to see something like that. Of course, I'd like to see our other different characters, Quentin and some others, sure. Okay, but I mean, that would be a good starting place, I would think. I know the hook would be Barnabas. Okay, but I would like to have it done. I have no idea what actor would do Barnabas. Okay, at first I thought it was the one who did Big Finish, Collins.
Andrew Collins. Andrew Collins.
Yeah, I was thinking that it would be him, okay, who would do it, but it would have to be somebody who would take on the role and approach it in a serious type of way, have it so that it's a sympathetic vampire, okay, and have it so that he would be heroic, okay, for it, okay, and I was going to go in one direction, but I don't necessarily want to do that. I am going to mention it. There are a lot of different characters historically that have been done in which the character is written in a certain gender, okay, and then in another iteration, they would change it. So I would not want Barnabas to be turned into a woman.
Okay.
They
did do that with Lost in Space with Dr. Smith. I know with the new Lost in Space.
Right, exactly. So I would like for it to, the key characters to stay there. Fine, Professor Stokes could be a woman, fine, you can have other characters like that. But the main one should be Barnabas and that whole arc with Angelique and that sort of thing.
But I'd like to see new characters introduced into it, like a next generation type thing.
Yeah.
Bring along another storyline that would, but it would have the new mixed with the old. Have some new ideas, plot lines, not just rehash the same plot lines over and over.
Yeah,
and over.
Agree. Yeah.
Big Finish had a good way that they would, and Big Finish, and you see them back there. I have all the Big Finish CDs. I have all the audio dramas.
Oh, you have the complete collection. Wow.
Excellent.
Cool.
So Stuart Manning and company, you did a great thing. Wonderful with regards to that. Stuart Manning's a great guy. I know you know this.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But with regards to that is concerned, yeah, like Rick was saying, to have the old with the new. Go ahead, Lorraine.
I would like to see it redone and brought up to a modern time. But one thing that I appreciated with Dan Curtis when he did Dark Shadows and when he did Night Stalker, which to me was funny,
I love Night Stalker,
that it wasn't gory. Okay, like in some of the TV shows, they get bitten and they're ripping off the neck or they're pulling out intestines. I would appreciate the story to stay pure as it is.
Yeah.
You saw Barnabas, he fangs, and then you said, oh, and fade to black and come back. So he never made it gory and you didn't have to hide or anything. I also believe that it can be brought up to a modern time, but I still want the castle, the estate, the cousin from England.
So you would rather see a remade versus like a sequel series than like a next generation?
Both, because the cousin can come from England, and then now is 2025.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a whole bunch of different things going on with politics and travel and whatever. But they never explain how you have a cousin that came from England without a British accent. So I would like it to be a little bit more proper.
And a vampire never dies. So therefore,
he's immortal.
He could be in 2024, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And so like Maggie Evans started out as a waitress and became a governess. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Also, when they redo it, okay, I want to see the original stars that are still around.
Yeah.
I want David Selby. He's written some books. Maybe he's a bookstore owner. Or Kathryn Leigh Scott is maybe an interior designer, and she gets into the estate and says, oh, we can do this and we can do that. I would love to see some of the originals, because when they did the Johnny Depp movie, it was like, hello, so glad that you have us here. Yeah. You had 4 of the original powerful stars from Dark Shadows, and they don't get a chance to say anything. So I think that if we had Donna Wandry, definitely Sharon, she has pets and whatever. Maybe she's running a pet store. Kathryn Leigh Scott is an interior designer. David is running a bookstore.
James Storm too. James Storm.
Yeah,
I'd love to see.
All of those. Yeah, James Storm is running a photography studio. The whole
absolutely.
Thing about it is that, and Marie Wallace, so they could have them into, even if they're just on the screen for 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that because they would be in new characters, it would be sort of like when you watch an Alfred Hitchcock movie, you're always waiting because he's always doing a cameo in it.
Right.
Okay, one time he was trying to get on a bus with an iron board and got stuck. Another time he got stuck in a revolving door or something. But I would like for the original stars that are still around, I would like to see them sprinkled in throughout the story. And I believe that Dark Shadows is timeless, because you got the vampire that's living forever, and oh my gosh, witches, we have them. So I think it would be interesting, but to stay with Dan Curtis's tradition, it should never ever get gory. Okay, the buildup of the music with Robert Colbert was dramatic effect enough, like in Jaws. Dun, 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 dun. But I think that kind of dramatic buildup is fantastic. But we do not have to see the knife ripping, and we don't have to.
No, agree.
Yeah, none of the gore. We don't need any of the gore.
You know, a trickle. Dark Shadows always had a little blood. You know, you're dealing with vampires and werewolves and stuff, but it was never like extreme. I never thought. It was just, you'd see like the bite marks. Earlier,
as Lorraine had said earlier about bringing characters, the original actors and stuff into the, that was Dan Curtis's original premise for the 91 series.
Oh yeah.
He had all along, he had planned, if it picked up, the series had picked up, he was planning to add the actors in little parts within the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a shame they never got to that. With regard to Kathryn Leigh Scott, I think, if it's set now, she could still even play Maggie, but just Maggie today. I think she's still very active and working, and I think she would be great. I'd love to see Jerry Lacey show up in there too.
Yes, he was very nice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and he's so talented. He's just has that gravitas when he talks. He would just be so good as, I don't know, like some descendant of Trask who shows up or something like that. There, we still.
There's always a Trask. Somewhere.
There's always a Trask. Yes, and like you said, Donna Wandry. There's so many actors.
Burn.
Nancy Barrett. My goodness, she's brilliant. Nancy Barrett is brilliant. We're fortunate. We still have a lot of the actors who are still with us. David Hennessy is down in Panama, so that would be if they brought him up, that would be, I don't know if he's so busy with his restaurant business, but he's been lately doing more Dark Shadows related stuff. Like Kathryn Leigh Scott did a nice interview with him that they played part of it at Remembrance, but she posted it on her Facebook page, the full interview with David Hennessy, and he's definitely been much more willing to participate in Dark Shadows related things lately, so it would be great to see him do something too. So yeah, like Sharon, I mean, we have so many of the cast members who are still with us, which is wonderful.
Kathy Cody, I believe.
Kathy Cody.
Kathy Cody, sure.
And if Hennessy can't leave, if he can't leave his restaurant, he could just zoom in and be the newscaster.
Oh my God.
This is David Collins with the news. There's been another report of a murder.
I would love that.
This is very suspicious. And the police are not releasing any details.
That would be amazing.
And all this stuff. Yeah, so he could be the newscaster on the 6
I love
o'clock,
that.
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock news. And so that would be fantastic. He could
That would be
still
great.
participate.
Oh my goodness, I love that idea. Very cool. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to the three of you. I'm so happy that we were able to do this, and I look forward to seeing.
Us too. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me and taking the time out and to talk to me.
Our pleasure. We had a ball. It's great.
That's
Great. Wonderful. And I look forward to catching up with the three of you at Seaview in the fall. So I will see you all there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We will be there.
Wonderful. Thank you for listening. And folks, if you're listening to the podcast, please make sure if you're watching the YouTube version of this, subscribe to the channel, please, and like the video. That does help the podcast to reach more Dark Shadows fans. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts in particular, or whatever podcast app you listen to, Spotify, please rate the podcast. Apple Podcasts, I think right now is up to 90 ratings, which is great. Let's get it to 100. 10 more ratings. We'll get it to 100. So please give it a rating if you listen on Apple Podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. I'm going to just hit stop.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Dark Shadows forever.
And for as long as they lived, the dark shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.